Jaren moved quietly through the bustling space colony, his eyes scanning every corner, every surface. The hum of engines and chatter of workers filled the corridors, but he remained in his own world. Silence had been his companion for as long as he could remember. He could not speak, not because he did not want to but because his body refused to make sound. People often overlooked him or dismissed him as fragile, even though his mind worked faster than most. He had learned to communicate with gestures, written notes, and sharp observation. Today he carried a toolkit heavier than usual. He had received a tip about an abandoned supply depot at the edge of the colony. It was said to contain broken drones, spare parts, and perhaps some old navigation modules that could be repaired. Jaren liked such places. They were quiet, far from the crowd, and full of puzzles waiting to be solved. Most humans avoided them, fearing the isolation and danger. But Jaren thrived in it. As he entered the depot, the temperature dropped sharply. Dust covered everything and broken crates littered the floor. He moved slowly, carefully stepping over shattered panels and jagged metal. Then he saw it, a dragon. It was small but older than he expected, wings torn, scales cracked and dulled by time and injury. The creature's chest rose and fell rapidly, breathing shallowly. Its golden eyes met his, filled with pain and fear. Jaren froze for a moment. The colony had stories of dragons, fierce, intelligent, untouchable, but this one seemed broken, desperate. Jaren knelt a few feet away, raising his hands in a non-threatening gesture. The dragon flinched but did not flee. He saw its sharp claws, the small wounds along its wings, and the faint smoke curling from its nostrils. Instinct and empathy took over. He opened his toolkit, pulling out soft fabric, some nutrient paste, and basic medical supplies. He moved slowly, each motion deliberate, careful not to startle it. He reached out with a cloth to clean one of the wounds. The dragon hissed softly but did not strike. Jaren noticed its chest heaving, the way it tried to lift itself, then collapsed again. Using scraps of metal and wires from the depot, he created a small support harness, sliding it under the dragon gently. It protested with a low growl but allowed him to adjust the straps. Jaren worked quickly, tying knots and adjusting the harness so it would hold the dragon upright without hurting it further. After a few tense moments, the dragon finally relaxed slightly. Its breathing slowed, though it remained wary. Jaren smiled faintly. He could not speak, but his satisfaction showed in his eyes and the soft gestures he made. He sat cross-legged, letting the dragon rest against the makeshift support. He offered a small portion of nutrient paste. The dragon sniffed, then slowly ate. Time passed slowly. Jaren checked every wound, adjusted the harness, and mended torn wing membranes as best as he could with scraps. He wrote notes on a small slate, showing instructions and plans to the dragon in the hope it could understand his intent. The dragon watched him with intelligent eyes, tilting its head, blinking slowly. It seemed to understand he meant no harm. As the day faded, Jaren realized the dragon was more than an injured creature. It was intelligent, aware, and cautious. It had been alone for a long time. Its scales bore the marks of past battles and scars of neglect. Yet it had survived. Jaren felt a strange connection forming. For the first time, he understood that this dragon, as much as he himself, had been defined by solitude and silence. Jaren spent the evening clearing debris around them, making a small safe space where the dragon could rest. He fashioned soft bedding from torn fabric and packed supplies nearby. Though he could not speak, he hummed quietly, a sound of comfort he hoped the dragon might feel as reassurance. The dragon shifted slightly, resting its head near him. Its eyes closed partially, a sign of trust, however small. Night fell over the depot, and the colony's lights shimmered faintly in the distance. Jaren stayed alert, watching the dragon, ensuring it remained stable. He thought about his life, defined by silence, by the world ignoring him. And now, here was a creature that also had been ignored, dismissed, or feared. Both of them were alone in different ways, yet together, something was beginning. By the end of the night, Jaren realized something important. He was not just repairing a dragon's body. He was creating a bridge between two worlds, one human, one dragon, built not with words but with care, patience, and understanding. The dragon, once isolated, now had a presence in the world again. And Jaren, silent for so long, felt a stir of connection he had never known. As he settled down beside the dragon for the night, he gently stroked its neck, careful and slow. It leaned slightly into him, a quiet acknowledgement of trust. Jaren understood then that this was the beginning, not just of recovery but of something that could change both their lives forever. Silence had defined him until now, but this dragon, broken yet alive, had the potential to give him a voice in ways he could not yet imagine. and for the first time the night felt less lonely. Jaren woke to the soft hum of the colony far below. Sunlight filtered through the depot windows, casting golden patterns on the floor. The dragon, which he had quietly named Ember, lay nearby, its chest rising and falling steadily. Overnight, the makeshift harness and careful care had kept it stable, but its eyes still held traces of fear and pain. Jaren studied those eyes, knowing that words would never be needed between them. They communicated in a language older than speech: trust, gestures, and patience. He offered a small portion of nutrient paste, holding it steadily in his hands. Ember's eyes flicked up, hesitant, before it moved forward and began to eat. Jaren smiled faintly, keeping his movements calm and slow. Every motion was deliberate. Every small interaction mattered. A sudden rush could frighten Ember, undoing the fragile bond forming between them. 4 days, Jaren stayed with Ember, moving through routines that balanced care and quiet companionship. He cleaned wounds, patched torn wings with makeshift bandages, and monitored the dragon's breathing. Ember responded, sometimes nudging him gently with its snout, other times rolling its eyes or flicking its tail, a dragon's version of expression. Slowly patterns emerged. Jaren noticed which gestures soothed it, how a soft tap near the wing eased tension, or how tilting his head slightly encouraged the dragon to focus on him rather than the world outside. During these moments, Jaren realized that Ember was intelligent beyond what most humans imagine. It could remember sequences, recognize objects, and even anticipate certain movements. When Jaren moved toward a damaged crate, Ember shifted its weight, ready to protect or assist. It was a subtle, silent coordination, yet the connection grew stronger each day. Jaren found ways to communicate more effectively without speech. He wrote on his slate, showing simple diagrams and notes: follow me, eat, stay, and safe. Ember responded with flicks of its tail, clicks of its tongue, and the soft fluttering of wings. They began exploring the depot together, carefully. Every corner held risks: broken panels, sharp edges, unstable scaffolds, but Ember's trust in Jaren allowed it to move confidently. And Jaren trusted Ember's instincts, letting the dragon lead through particularly tricky passages or warn him of hazards. One day, as they ventured deeper into the depot, Jaren found a collapsed storage rack. Crates had tumbled to the floor, blocking access to a section filled with spare parts. He gestured to Ember, showing the path and offering guidance. Ember tilted its head, studying the obstacle, then nudged some crates aside with surprising precision, using its claws and snout carefully. Jaren's eyes lit up. Good, he wrote on his slate, showing it to the dragon. Ember flicked its tail in what Jaren interpreted as agreement or perhaps pride. Evenings became their quiet time. Jaren would sit cross-legged, brushing Ember's scales where it had scars, murmuring soft hums that he hoped felt comforting. Ember leaned closer, resting its head near his lap, and sometimes nuzzled his shoulder. In these moments, Jaren felt something stirring inside, a sense of being understood even without words. The silence he had carried all his life was no longer emptiness. It had a companion, a partner who could hear without hearing and see without speaking. As their bond grew, so did Jaren's confidence. He began exploring ideas he had never dared to consider before, repairing broken drones together, testing small flight exercises, and even attempting to teach Ember simple signals. A flap of wings meant come, a low click meant stay, and a tail flick could signal yes. Ember learned quickly, picking up patterns with astonishing speed. Jaren realized that this silent partnership was teaching him as much as it taught the dragon. One afternoon, Jaren found Ember watching a panel of glowing screens in the depot. Curious, he scribbled on his slate, "Do you want to see?" Ember's eyes narrowed, then it stepped closer, careful not to disturb the delicate equipment. Jaren guided it, showing how buttons and switches worked. Ember watched intently, occasionally nudging levers and pressing small panels with precise motions. The dragon seemed to understand purpose and consequence, and Jaren marveled at its intelligence. Their days followed a rhythm: exploration, care, play, and quiet reflection. Jaren's silent life had been defined by routine and observation, but now it was full of shared experience and understanding. He began noticing subtle signs in Ember that indicated mood and intention. A flick of the tail meant impatience or excitement. The position of its wings hinted at comfort or tension. Every movement became a form of language. Through this routine, a realization struck Jaren. Communication was more than words. Trust, empathy, and shared experience were voices of their own. He had lived in silence for years, but with Ember, he discovered that connection was possible in ways humans rarely understood. The dragon had given him something he had never known: a voice that did not need sound, a language of care and understanding that transcended speech. By the end of the week, Jaren and Ember had explored nearly every corner of the depot. Broken drones were fixed, spaces were cleaned, and small safe areas were created for rest and recovery. But the most important achievement was invisible, the bond they had formed. Silent yet strong, patient yet powerful, it bridged two different beings, two different worlds and two lonely hearts. As Jaren settled near Ember that evening, he scratched gently behind the dragon's ears, feeling the warmth of life beneath the scales. Ember leaned into the touch, closing its eyes. Jaren traced patterns on the slate, simple words and symbols, and the dragon responded instinctively. He understood now that silence was no longer a limitation. It was a space where understanding could grow, where trust could be built, and where a voice could emerge in ways the universe had never expected. And in that quiet depot, far from the bustling colony, a human and a dragon learned to speak together, not with sound but with connection, patience, and the unspoken language of care. The morning light barely pierced the thick clouds that hung over the colony. Jaren and Ember were already awake, moving through their usual routines. The depot had become their home, a quiet refuge where trust and understanding had grown between human and dragon. Jaren checked the harness and supplies while Ember stretched its wings, letting out a low rumble that echoed softly across the empty space. It was a peaceful morning, but peace was fragile in a galaxy that rarely stayed quiet for long. As Jaren repaired a damaged drone, a sudden vibration ran through the depot. At first he thought it was a minor tremor, but the hum grew stronger. Through the viewport he saw shapes moving rapidly among the asteroid fields, ships, sleek and angular, unfamiliar. His stomach tightened. Rogue factions had been reported in the area, capturing rare creatures for experiments. And Ember was one of the most unique he had ever seen. He gestured sharply to Ember, pointing toward the rear exit and then drawing a line in the dust to indicate a safe path. Ember tilted its head, sensing the urgency. The dragon's scales bristled slightly, and a low growl escaped its throat. Jaren scribbled on his slate, "Danger. Must leave. Follow me." Ember responded immediately, stepping carefully but quickly toward the exit. The rogue ships were faster than Jaren expected. Sensors in the depot indicated multiple targets closing in. Jaren guided Ember through narrow passages, ducking behind fallen crates, slipping through debris-strewn corridors. The dragon's instincts were precise. It anticipated obstacles, nudging Jaren aside when a loose panel threatened to fall, flapping its wings to create wind currents that could mask their presence. They reached a section of the depot where old repair drones were scattered. Jaren quickly activated a few, sending them spinning and creating visual distractions. Ember followed his lead, using its tail and claws to shift crates, blocking sight lines and making the path behind them harder to follow. Every movement was silent, controlled, and coordinated. Jaren felt a thrill of adrenaline mixed with fear. For the first time, survival depended entirely on their bond. As they moved through the asteroid corridors, the attackers fired warning pulses, scanning for life signs. Ember reacted instinctively, curling its wings around Jaren as they slipped past a narrow passage. Sparks from the rogue scanners lit the walls briefly, illuminating the dragon's scales and Jaren's tense expression. The human felt a strange surge of emotion, a connection so strong with Ember that he could anticipate its reactions before they happened. Together they became one silent unit, each instinctively understanding the other's next move. At one point, Jaren paused near a collapsed support beam, realizing the only path forward was a thin walkway that spanned a deep chasm. He looked at Ember. The dragon's golden eyes met his, and a low hum vibrated through the air as if asking, "Can you trust me?" Jaren nodded slightly, and Ember flapped its wings powerfully, lifting both of them across the gap with surprising agility. The bridge creaked but held, and they landed safely on the other side. Jaren scribbled quickly, "Good. Keep moving." Ember's tail flicked in agreement. Hours seemed to pass in a blur as they navigated abandoned stations and asteroid debris. Jaren used every skill he had, engineering knowledge, quick thinking, and silent communication, to evade the rogue ships. Ember became both shield and guide, sensing danger, moving swiftly, and protecting the human from harm. Each moment tested their trust, and each success reinforced it. Jaren realized he had never felt so alive, so connected, as he did in the shared tension and synchronized action with Ember. Finally, they reached a small, hidden station on the edge of the asteroid field. It was isolated, partially collapsed, and perfect for hiding. Jaren guided Ember inside, checking quickly for hazards. They had escaped immediate danger, but Jaren knew the threat was not gone. The rogue faction would continue searching, and Ember, being rare and unique, was a valuable target. He looked at the dragon, sensing its exhaustion and quiet confidence. Together they had survived the first real threat. That night, Jaren sat cross-legged while Ember rested nearby. He scribbled on his slate, "We survived. Together." Ember tilted its head, nudging the slate with its snout as if approving the message. Jaren smiled faintly. Silence had been his world, but now it felt alive with purpose. His connection with Ember had not only saved them but had shown him a new way to exist, through trust, understanding, and courage. Outside, rogue ships continued to patrol, their lights flashing in the distance. Jaren and Ember were hidden, but he knew this was only the beginning. Danger would return and they would need to be ready. Yet for the first time he did not feel fear alone. He had a partner, a companion whose instincts and strength complemented his own. Together they could face whatever the galaxy sent. As the stars shimmered through the viewport, Jaren stroked Ember's neck gently. The dragon closed its eyes, leaning into the touch. Jaren whispered silently to himself, feeling an emotion he had never known before: hope. Silence had defined his life, yes, but now it was filled with action, trust, and a voice that spoke without words. Ember had given him that. And together they would face the galaxy side by side, ready for the threats and challenges yet to come. That night, Jaren understood a truth he could not have spoken before. True strength was not in the weapons they carried or the speed of their flight. It was in the bond between them, unbroken, unspoken, and unshakable. And with Ember he had found that strength. The hidden station was quiet, its broken walls and flickering lights creating a strange calm after the chaos of the rogue attack. Jaren and Ember rested side by side, both exhausted but alert. The adrenaline of escape had faded, leaving space for reflection. Jaren studied the dragon closely. Ember's eyes, once wary and fearful, now held a spark of understanding, almost as if it knew the bond between them had deepened beyond survival. Jaren tapped on his slate, writing simple phrases: "We need to understand each other more." He pointed to Ember, then to himself, and traced a line connecting the two. Ember tilted its head, ears flicking in response, then nudged his hand gently. That single motion was enough. Jaren realized that their connection could grow beyond gestures, nudges, and glances. He wondered, could there be a way to communicate deeper? Over the next days, Jaren experimented. He guided Ember to focus on small tasks, rewarding careful responses with gentle touches and soft hums. Ember began to recognize subtle signals from Jaren: slight shifts in body position, hand gestures, even a pause or blink. It was more than learning, it was understanding intention. And Ember had its own way of communicating back. Low rumbles, clicks, and subtle wing flutters conveyed moods, warnings, or suggestions. One afternoon, Jaren noticed something remarkable. As Ember concentrated, it emitted a low, vibrating hum that resonated through the station floor. Jaren felt a strange tingling in his chest and mind, a sensation of understanding and emotion without a single word. He scribbled quickly on his slate, "Are you talking to me?" Ember's eyes locked onto his, and the vibration grew slightly stronger. Jaren realized that the dragon's hum was more than sound, it was a bridge, a connection that allowed him to sense thought and emotion. Excitement surged through him. This was more than communication, it was a voice. Not a spoken one, but a language of shared understanding, one that transcended the limits of human speech. Jaren tried to focus, matching his thoughts to the rhythm of Ember's hum. Slowly he felt the connection strengthen, as if he could share intentions and feelings directly with the dragon. Ember's eyes reflected recognition, and Jaren understood. They had unlocked a new level of interaction, one built on trust, focus, and empathy. They began practicing. Jaren imagined simple concepts: come, stay, yes, no, while concentrating on Ember's resonance. Ember responded in kind, shifting body weight, flicking wings, or emitting a soft hum. Every success filled Jaren with exhilaration. For the first time in his life, he had a voice that was uniquely his, one that did not rely on sound or words. It was silent, yet powerful. Their connection proved invaluable as threats lingered. Rogue scouts continued to search the nearby asteroid fields, and Jaren realized he could use Ember's abilities to anticipate danger. He practiced sending intention through the resonance, guiding Ember to respond before threats appeared. When a small patrol ship entered the sector, Ember's hum alerted Jaren, and they moved silently through hidden tunnels. The patrol passed without noticing them, and Jaren felt a rush of pride. This new connection was not just for communication, it was survival, strategy, and partnership all at once. Jaren also discovered that the resonance carried emotion. When he felt fear, Ember sensed it and responded with a reassuring hum, a gentle nudge or a flick of the tail. When Jaren felt hope or excitement, Ember mirrored it, reinforcing confidence. It was a feedback loop of trust and understanding. For the first time, Jaren realized that silence had never been a limitation, it had been preparation. It had allowed him to sense nuances, observe patterns and now communicate in a way others could not. Ember seemed to understand that Jaren was learning something profound. The dragon guided him to quiet observation points where they could watch the galaxy beyond the station. Jaren scribbled on his slate, "Do you feel it too?" Ember leaned close, pressing its head against his shoulder, letting a soft vibration hum through him. Jaren felt a surge of understanding, almost as if they were sharing thoughts, feelings and intentions in a language older than words. The bond between them grew so strong that even the simplest tasks became seamless. When Jaren moved toward a damaged panel, Ember would anticipate the action, stepping aside to clear space or nudging parts into alignment. When danger approached, the dragon reacted before Jaren even sensed it, and he followed instinctively, trusting Ember completely. Their combined skills allowed them to repair essential equipment in the station, restoring power and communication systems with incredible efficiency. By the end of the week, Jaren realized something transformative. Ember had given him more than understanding, it had given him a voice, a way to express thought, intention, and emotion without a single sound. And in turn, Jaren had given Ember safety, care, and companionship. Together, they had formed a partnership that no threat could easily break. As the colony's lights twinkled faintly in the distance, Jaren sat with Ember atop the station's observation deck. He traced a gentle line along the dragon's scaled neck, feeling the hum vibrate through his fingertips. The resonance pulsed steadily, connecting mind to mind. Jaren knew that this was more than survival, it was evolution. He scribbled once more on his slate, "We understand each other. We are stronger together." Ember's eyes glimmered in the dim light, a subtle flick of the tail affirming the sentiment. For the first time, Jaren felt a fullness in his life, a voice that belonged only to him, shared in silence, understood by another being and capable of shaping the future. Silence had defined him, yes, but now it carried power. Connection was a force stronger than fear, faster than any weapon and deeper than words. Jaren smiled faintly as he leaned against Ember, feeling the warmth of life and understanding ripple through them. Together, human and dragon had discovered something rare, a voice that needed no sound, a bond that could face the galaxy, and a partnership that would change everything. And in that quiet station, surrounded by the stars, Jaren finally understood that true communication was not about speaking, it was about being understood. Ember had given him that gift, and nothing in the universe could take it away. The colony stirred as Jaren and Ember emerged from their hidden station. Word of rogue attacks had spread, but no one had seen the small human and his dragon companion navigate the chaos with precision and skill. Jaren moved with quiet confidence, guiding Ember through familiar corridors, their bond visible in every step. Though he still could not speak aloud, his presence radiated purpose. The silence that had once defined him now carried authority, calm, and trust. As they reached the colony's central hub, other humans paused, staring at the dragon perched beside Jaren. Whispers spread through the crowd. Rare dragons were not just dangerous, they were symbols of power, untouchable and feared. And yet, Ember's posture was relaxed, its eyes gentle, mirroring Jaren's calm demeanor. The colony slowly realized that this dragon was not wild or aggressive. It was controlled not by fear or threat, but by trust, and it had chosen Jaren as a companion. Jaren held up his slate, showing messages that outlined their journey. "We survived. We protect. We help." Ember nudged the slate with its snout, as if affirming each word. People watched in awe. They had never seen a human and dragon work together so seamlessly. Actions, not words, conveyed more than any speech could. Jaren understood then that voice was not limited to sound. Connection, trust, and deeds were voices in themselves, powerful and undeniable. Leaders of the colony approached cautiously. They asked questions through gestures and scribbled notes, curious about how a silent human could navigate rogue attacks and protect a creature so powerful. Jaren responded with simple diagrams and gestures, showing strategies, safe paths and defensive maneuvers. Ember demonstrated alongside him, shifting its weight, flapping wings and nudging equipment, proving the effectiveness of their partnership. Every movement reinforced the silent message. Strength was not in aggression alone, but in understanding and cooperation. Children and workers gathered nearby, fascinated. They mimicked Jaren's gestures, attempting to communicate with Ember. The dragon responded to small signals, flaring wings lightly or humming vibrations that pulsed through the ground. Jaren smiled faintly. His silence had once separated him from the world, but now it was a bridge. Ember had given him a voice that transcended speech, and together they inspired everyone around them. As days passed, Jaren and Ember took on small missions for the colony, repairing broken infrastructure, guiding lost travelers and monitoring patrols. The rogue faction had not returned yet, but their presence was a constant threat. Jaren's ability to communicate silently with Ember allowed them to anticipate danger, avoid traps and protect the colony efficiently. Every action was precise, a demonstration of trust, coordination and silent intelligence. One evening, the colony's council gathered to honor the human and his dragon. Jaren could not speak, but the council's chief scribbled a note. "You have done what many could not. Your bond is remarkable. The colony owes you gratitude." Jaren nodded, and Ember nudged him gently, vibrating a soft hum that conveyed pride and reassurance. The message passed silently to everyone present. Courage and understanding mattered more than words or weapons. Over time, Jaren began teaching others the principles he and Ember had developed. Humans learned to observe, to understand gestures and to trust instincts. They realized that communication did not always require sound. Simple acts of care, awareness of emotion, and shared purpose could be louder than any shout or command. The colony began to function in ways previously unimagined, guided by silent coordination and empathy. Jaren noticed that his own confidence had changed. He could navigate challenges with a new sense of certainty, not because he had a voice others could hear, but because he had found one that was uniquely his. Ember had given him the ability to express thought, intention, and emotion directly. That voice had reshaped not only his life, but the lives of everyone who witnessed it. One quiet night, Jaren and Ember stood on a plateau overlooking the colony. Stars shimmered above, and distant ships glided past in the dark expanse. Jaren ran his fingers along Ember's scaled neck, feeling the steady hum of life and resonance. He reflected on the journey, from the first injured encounter in the depot to surviving rogue attacks, building trust and learning a language without words. Silence had defined him once, but now it was filled with meaning, purpose and connection. Ember leaned against him, nudging his shoulder gently. Jaren scribbled on his slate, "Together we are more than silent. Together we are strong." The dragon's tail flicked in acknowledgement. They had formed a partnership that could face any challenge, not through aggression alone, but through understanding, courage and shared action. The colony below had begun to change. People no longer feared the dragons blindly. They saw potential, partnership and hope. And at the center of it all was a silent human whose courage, patience and compassion had forged a bond strong enough to reshape their world. Jaren smiled faintly, feeling the hum of connection from Ember pulse through him. He realized that silence was no longer a limitation, it was a strength. Words had never been necessary to prove value, to inspire, or to lead. He had found a voice in deeds, understanding, and the bond with a creature that once seemed untouchable. As they stood together under the vast galaxy, human and dragon, the world felt different. Silence had been broken, not by sound but by trust, action, and an unshakable bond. Jaren finally understood that true voice came not from speaking, but from being understood, from connection, and from courage. And in that understanding, a silent human and a dragon had forged something stronger than words, an unbreakable partnership that would shape the colony and the stars beyond. The galaxy was vast, full of challenges and unknowns, but Jaren and Ember faced it side by side. Silence no longer confined him. It had become a bridge, a force, and a voice that could echo across worlds. Together they had changed everything.